This ain't no ordinary stream. From the ashes, Phoenix talks manifest in a dream. Got a growing channel, YouTube's where the wisdom resides. For all the Nest members, no truth can ever hide. She's an under-detective on the digital beat, questioning the unthinkable, bringing fire to the heat. With a mind so advanced, highly intelligent and bold, part of the hive mind with birdie stories to unfold. Common sense is a superpower, cutting through the noise, unlocking closed minds, amplifying all our voices.
Phoenix, Phoenix, what do you see? Unlocking knowledge for you and me. The nest is rising strong and true, sharing wisdom, me and you. Clap, clap, clap for the truth we seek. Every answer, week by week.
So here we are again. Nice to see you guys. How are you? Beautiful Sunday afternoon. Had some free time, was digging, and I thought, why not do a live dig? And y'all get in here and let's do this. So I was looking at the evidence for the sheath. I was watching a few videos, putting some things together, and I noticed something very interesting in regards to this knife sheath that was found. Not only when it was found, but I'll tell you in a little bit. I'm going to keep you guys guessing because this is going to be fun. Now, remember, on the live dig, I do have to, right at my fingertips, access to the website, which is Justice for All. I'll throw it down in the chat real quick so you can get to it if you need to. It's justice for spelled out all.com. And anyone can go there and download the Moscow PDF reports right at the bottom of this little segment at the website. And justiceforall.com. There you go. There's the website. They keep pointing us towards the gray bar and why there are two guns listed in evidence. Absolutely. And we'll get to that because I'll show you why they're tying that together. You have to look at the dates in regards to evidence. That is important. So when you get in here, you little nesters, so when you go to the website, you will definitely see what I'm talking about. If you download the reports, you can easily search them, which I'm going to share my screen with you in one moment so that you can actually see, oh crap, exactly what she's telling us is right there in front of us. So first I'm going to watch a real quick video, and then we'll go back into another one I found that I thought it was pretty interesting. Let's watch this really quick. We'll watch this one first, and then we'll watch an expert. Hold on. Hopefully you guys can see that on my screen. And if not, let me take this off. Let's watch this video first. I think this one is courtesy of Court TV. And I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. And let's go ahead and watch it.
from the roommate's call, or phone, excuse me, and we're not going to divulge who made that call.
They came here together. They eventually get into the same apartment together.
Is this your place?
Yeah.
Perfect. You know why we're here?
And I assume noise.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I know I talk about myself a lot, but like, what would you guys do in my situation?
And in the end, they died together.
The knife sheath could have been planted by the real killer. Sound familiar? No, this isn't a theory from the O.J. Simpson case. This is the latest defense strategy for Brian Kohberger. Prosecutors revealed this information in a new court filing. The filing from the defense team appears to still be sealed on it. Here's what we know. Kohberger's defense team plans to argue that the knife sheath found at the scene of the crime could have been planted by the real killer. DNA on the knife sheath is central to the case.
He's been a little bit wishy-washy on the DNA on the knife sheath itself. You don't get to claim Fourth Amendment standing and then just say, well, that may be my DNA, but I have no idea how it got there. We have a defendant who is trying to get the best of both worlds. He's trying to say, well, it's not my DNA and the state can't prove that, but he's also trying to say that he has Fourth Amendment standing. And that is not how the Fourth Amendment works.
Now, remember, the DNA recovered from that knife sheath led investigators to Brian Kohberger. So what's the play here? From the defense team, let's bring in our legal eagles. Still with me, John Phillips. I want to welcome in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, Michael J. Brown. All right, Michael, your thoughts here. Is this theory going to work?
Good morning, everybody. Julie, it's not a bad one. The DNA being on the sheath in and of itself doesn't mean that Kohberger is the killer. I mean, it simply means that his DNA is on the sheath. As we all know, touch DNA is very easy to transmit. I can touch an object right here in my office. Somebody takes it away. It goes to another state tomorrow, and Mike Brown's DNA is now at a crime scene. Doesn't mean I'm the killer. So the planting aspect is a little suspect. I don't know if that word is being manipulated or not. I think, and I don't want to speak for them, it may be more that his DNA is on the sheath as opposed to it's intentionally placed there by the real killer. But it's definitely an issue. And keep in mind, there's DNA, unidentified, male identified DNA on the glove outside as well as on the railing. So that's interesting, and it's definitely going to be an issue at trial.
Michael, great points. You hit on something that I think is so key for us to explore here. Big difference between a plant or just happen to take an object that somebody else once touched and leave it behind. So let's explore this. So John Phillips, which do you think would be the better route to go? That somebody intentionally wanted to frame Kohberger for doing these murders, or that somebody may have gotten a hold of that K-bar knife that maybe was Kohberger's at some point in time. He had touched the snap on it because it belonged to him, and then that gets left behind, and suddenly everybody thinks Kohberger must have done it.
I think the issue here is just trying to find a means to the end. Look, Johnny Cochran and Mark Furman are not coming in to save the day like they did with the bloody sock and trying to find somebody to frame for being the one who planted it. But like the judge said, I think it was the judge, if you were killing somebody with a knife, that sheath's probably pretty important. And the fact that his DNA is on the button of that sheath is such a huge piece of evidence, along with, as Michael said, the other DNA, along the chain. But they've just, I think that's one of their worst, if not their worst piece of evidence. And they've got to find another way to get it there.
Yeah, I love the point you made about this isn't the O.J. Simpson case where Mark Furman was a perfect person for the defense team to blame because all of the stuff that came out about him being racist was horrible. And it was like they made him the bad guy, and because he worked the scene, he was an easy target. You're right, they don't have that here. Michael J. Brown, so let's go down the road of the defense team is going to say this was planted. Somebody wanted to frame Kohberger for this. If they don't have somebody with that animosity, an axe to grind, or whatever, is it just going to fall flat?
Yeah, Julie, it's going to be a tough sell, the plant part of it. Again, I want to stress, and I'm not the attorney on this, and they know the best, but I think the better approach is probably, hey, this guy could have touched it. It could have been transmitted 3 times over to get onto the sheath. Whose DNA is on that glove? That's a bloody glove. Whose DNA is on that railing? That's a bloody handprint. And it is not Kohlberg. It is not the defendant. So, yeah, his DNA could be everywhere and anywhere, but it's really going to be about the corroborative evidence. Is there other evidence that's going to establish his presence in the home? And I know there is some, because that's what's going to really nail that DNA home, as opposed to give the defense an out here.
I like what you're saying there, Michael. The other DNA, who else was in that house? Big party house, doors unlocked. There are no signs of forced entry. Remember, so whoever did this crime went on right in without any problems. John Phillips, do you think we're going to see perhaps a combination of these theories where they may say that, okay, somebody could have planted it, or maybe it, he just touched it, and then, but wait, what about the DNA in the glove found outside of the house? And what about the DNA found on the railing inside? Are they going to point to those other specific people, you think?
Exactly. A fact alone, I don't remember who said this, but somewhere I think I stole it from somebody else's closing argument, but a fact alone is like a one-legged chair. It's not going to stand up on its own. You need other supporting facts to be able to make the chair stand up. And so they've got to figure out, as a defense, certainly we can just talk in black letter law and reasonable doubt, but that chair's got to stand up. You've got to have other pieces of evidence to show how or why Kohlberger was the one who happened to have this planted sheath laying next to a victim.
Exactly. Well said, John. I've got a clip of that traffic stop where Kohlberger and his dad are driving on home back to PA. Let's take a look.
He's been a little bit wishy-washy on the DNA on the knife sheath itself. You don't get to claim.
Okay, so now that we've seen this video, they're talking about the defense wanted to say the evidence was planted, and I get why they contended to not go with the theory it was planted. They decided just to go with, yeah, that's his print. But here's the deal, and I don't know if anyone on Ann's team saw this, but I saw it, and I saw it very clear, and I thought, let's do a special live and let's dig together in the evidence. Is this really evidence? Summer, thank you so much for the super sticker. That will go to keeping the website up. And just so you know, when they listed this in the documents on our website, Justice for All, FOUR all, you can go download the PDF file, and I want you to see, let's do a live dig. Are you all up for a live dig right now? Type a 1 in the chat if you are ready to rock and roll, because I am going to share my screen, and we are going to see this live dig. This is very important, because is this truly evidence? So I'm going to go to page 1. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with y'all so you can see what I'm doing. If you have a handy device next to you, definitely feel free to grab that, follow along. It is so important that we look at the evidence, especially when someone is being charged with 4 murders, burglary, pleads guilty to allegedly avoid the death penalty, and is sitting in prison for the rest of their entire lives. Could this possibly be an alleged cover-up? All right. So I've got the documents pulled up. And I'm just going to hit the find button, and I'm going to find everything that pertains to a sheath. Let's see what we can find. Sheath. All right. So item 11 is the knife sheath. You guys see that right there? Hopefully you can see. Marissa, thank you so much. That will go to the website to keep so everyone can easily see this. And I do have a synopsis of the most important documents in this. I will throw up there later on. Kara, thank you so much. Kara donated 99 cents from the UK, I believe. So when you look at these things, it says number 11 is evidence of a sheath. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to find the next sheath on here. There's one of 24. The next sheath basically talks about in supplement 157. I'm sorry, wrong supplement. Let me scroll down a little bit. Supplement 70. Lawrence Mowry says on 11, well, actually it says 12, December 13th, 22. That's a month later. And he goes on to say, on November 21st, I applied for and was granted a warrant for Walmart for the sales of the following items between January 1st, 2022 to present. He lists a K-bar knife. Shit, why does it keep doing that? It lists a K-bar knife. I know why it's doing that, because I hit sheath. Shoot. Okay, hold on. So he got a warrant for everything for a knife sheath from Walmart. What document was that? That was the second one. Hold on. Once I find it, I got to hit off of that find because it'll go back up. So what supplement was that again? Supplement, that was not 136. Dang it. You know, technology is not perfect. Let me find the next one. Hold on. So you're going to find all the ones that pertain to a sheath if you do a find. So I'll just go through these real quick. You'll have to go through and on your own. And as I'm digging, you'll kind of see just a generic response. So they asked for the warrant between certain time frames. They wanted to know anyone who purchased one came back negative. Right. So it says the next search for the sheath was on December 27, 22. Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from Koberger's family residence in Pennsylvania. The evidence was sent to the state lab for processing. Okay. On December 28, 22, the Idaho State Lab reported that the DNA profile obtained from the trash with the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified as the male not being excluded as the biological father of the suspect profile. 99.99% of the male population would be expected to be excluded. So basically, they're saying that the suspect's biological father. And based on the information, I requested a warrant be issued for Brian C. Koberger for burglary at 1122 King Street and 4 counts of murder. So they pull the trash, they test the father's DNA, and then they do what with it, guys? They send it to the Idaho State Lab and it reports that, bingo, you got a hit. Well, of course they got a hit. They pulled the trash. Then they said, okay, how did this get on the sheath from the ISP? How did they really find it on the knife, or did they find that his DNA could have matched his dad's DNA and it was really from the trash pool, or was the DNA on the knife sheath? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which one? Anybody know? We don't, but we can look at the narrative reports and we can figure out when this knife sheath was tested. Okay, so if you go sheath, there's going to be other sheaths that people found. They found a sheath in the woods or by a tree. 2 kids found it, and there's one in a ditch. They collected all these sheaths. They talk about the Amazon one that was purchased. I accessed Koberger's white Hyundai Elantra in order to photograph the items. The items identified as being ordered by Koberger used to purchase the K-bar knife with sheath. So there were a couple of items in his trunk. The items were identified as being ordered by Amazon. I was able to identify 3 items from the trunk, which could possibly identify as the same items ordered on Amazon, returned via subpoena in this case. The first item was vitamin D2, vegan, on the Amazon return. The bottle was in the trunk compartment and it was obviously labeled vegan. I possibly located a Leader brand scissor jack, 1.2 tons, on the Amazon return. A third item was a triangle dot approved, little warning sign. Okay, all right, so that's fine. So then you see the next one is 8. They had a K-bar sharpener, and vegan supplements, but this was purchased by ISP Detective Darren Gilbertson on Amazon. He ordered the purchases just like Koberger would have, with a K-bar and a sheath, with a sharpener and a bottle of supplements. An exact same 3 items Koberger purchased. Okay, so they put that into evidence. They put their order that they bought with this into evidence in this case. Okay, we'll get back to that in another live. So then you go down and there's another order. There's another supplement, 222, that James Fry takes, and 7/25/23. And he says, this is like 6 months later that this narrative was written in the reports, guys. Okay. On November 28th, 22, just a couple weeks after the unalivings, KJS, with the initials redacted, came to the police department to speak with me. S was hesitant to talk due to being acquaintances with AB. Well, that's Adam, the bar Adam. S told me she did not believe, redacted, Adam, was involved in the homicide, but stated that he was always had a large sheathed knife on him. S said that B, Adam, was interested in her daughter and made her uncomfortable at times. S told me she believed he had been in the Marines for several years and wanted this information passed on. Okay, did you get that? That's a little nugget of information right there. Little tiny nugget of information that will be important later on. Keep that in mind. So that was number 10 of 24. Let's go to the next one. Oh, there's a report, an FBI lead. On March 6, 24, I conducted follow-up from a tip from the FBI database. Wow. The tip stated a male, RV, had posted in hiking group on Facebook that he found a K-bar knife with a sheath. Well, obviously, if you find a K-bar knife with a sheath, could it be the one in this crime? Yes or no? Maybe a new sheath was bought. Well, he was hiking in the Cascade Mountains. Investigation into this area of the country did not yield a link to any known travel path of Koberger for the timeline in question. In addition, the knife was found with a sheath. That was my thought process. I attempted to provide the contact with V using the numbers provided by the FBI tip as well as TLO. None of the numbers were viable and I was unable to contact V. This tip is closed as of this report. Okay, they didn't go collect the knife and test the DNA because it could have been the knife, but somebody else could have bought a sheath and discarded it somewhere. or decided to get rid of it, or had a spare sheath. Who knows? Everyone has one of these knives on them in camps and hikes in freaking Idaho, I'm telling you. As a former Idahoan, it is. So the next 13 that's found of 24 is, as of their users, it was a supplement. It says there's associated knife sheath purchase on or before November 13th. I'm requesting the assistance of Latah County Prosecutor's Office to apply for the warrant of the following. The usernames, yada, yada, yada. Okay, this one wasn't as important. It was an eBay search warrant. No big deal. Nothing came back that they knew of. But there's something in this report on page 483 that I found of really interest, in my humble opinion. Brett Payne put a sequence supplement number 51 in the file on 12/4/22. There's a whole list of evidence, and 11 is the knife sheath. So you come back and you read the narrative. At approximately 4 o'clock on 11/13, Sergeant Blaker and I, this is Brett Payne speaking and typing this report, to 1122 King Road to assist with the scene security processing. Upon our arrival, yada, 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 oh, yeah, okay. So then he enters 1122 King Road through the bottom floor on the north side. Okay, there's a small bedroom on the west side of the bottom floor. The door was ajar, and I could see a bed with covers and several other miscellaneous personal items strewn about. The room did not appear to have been occupied by anyone, as I did not see clothes inside. I followed Officer Smith down the hall, where there was a small bedroom next to a small bathroom on the east side, which I later learned was a utility closet. Small bathroom down the hall, not a bedroom, sorry. And then this closet had a pin code style lock, and it was secured. So next to the small bathroom, it was secured. What was in that utility closet that was secured? I looked into the bedroom on the east side, bottom floor, which later learned belonged to Bethany Funk. The room had normal clothes and personal items, but otherwise didn't seem out of the ordinary. So I'm going to skip a little bit of this. I'm going to go all the way to the third bedroom. I'm going to skip this. You guys can go back and read it. It's pretty graphic. Okay. So then it goes down and he says, okay, here it is. This is Brett Payne speaking. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogan's right side when viewed from the door. I remained in the room for a moment, then proceeded back outside. What did he do for a moment? Was he just taking it all in? Was he looking around? Was he just trying to what? I mean, at that point, what do you determine? Then he says, I remained on scene and conducted several more walkthroughs of the crime scene with the forensic ISP team. And then the prosecutor shows up, right? And then they do the search warrant. Okay, got it. So they collected about 56 pieces of evidence. Number 11 seems to be the knife sheath. Great. So I'm going to go back into my search. I'm going to type sheath, and I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to take me back to 13. That's where we were with that report. So obviously the next one, this is the one that he applied for the Walmart grant. This is 16. So this is supplement 70, talks about the warrant. Okay. He goes on to say, I got the documents, and it looks like a big goose egg, right? because that's all it says. It says that it was received. Nothing was turned into evidence. Nothing found. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And I'll get a pulse on the chat in a minute because I want to find the one that I'm going to give you a bombshell moment. So that was 16. I'm going to go to the next one. 16. Okay. This is interesting. Page 557. Okay. John Reninsky is writing this on Supplement 8. This is the narrative of the follow-up to secure the crime scene. And obviously, he showed up on scene the afternoon of the crime. And he basically said the following day on 11/14, I learned that a sheath was found inside the apartment. What apartment? I think he's talking about the house. What do you guys think? You think he's talking about the house? Maybe. The sheath was tan in leather and had Marine Corps Eagle Globe and anchor symbol on the sheath. The words USMC were located in the EGA on the K bar was above EGA. I was tasked to follow up the business in town to see if a particular knife was sold there. I went to Tri-State Outfitters, Big Five Sporting Goods, and Moscow Building Supply, Spence Hardware, and Walmart. Each of the stores above do not sell K-Bar brand knife. Went to the Walmart, showing them knives. She told me about 2 or 3 weeks ago, a college-aged white male asked for a black ski mask that would cover his face. She was unable to provide him much detail other than that he was taller than she was, maybe had tan skin complexion. She also advised the male did not have any black ski mask and only camo. She said the male then walked away. Then he goes on to say, at about 11:45 hours, I spoke with PR at Memorial Gym substation. R is currently in the blank for the fraternity, redacted. I asked R if he could walk me through what he did on the night of 11/12 and the early morning of 11/13/22. He said about 6:30 he was at a party. The party was at the Tree House, which was an off-campus house for sorority, redacted. R did not know the specific address, but he said the house is near the White apartments. R said at the party that E and A, we know that's Emily, was with E. I think that's who was with D. I don't know who D is in this scenario. Boyfriend, also known maybe H. He's not sure either. R said A was the only member of blank that he recognized at the party. R said he left around 11 or what is that? Around 2200, 11 or 12. Well, no, sorry, that's 21. That's 10 or 11 hours. Then he went back to blank and watched a movie with blank. Then R said he went to the corner club about 1:49 in the morning. He went to go pick up JG and JD and NR. Who is NR? They said they were alone and weren't with anyone. R said he dropped all 3 of the individuals off at their apartment off of King Road. Said after he dropped them off, he went back home. Oh, that's an interesting find. Keep that in mind too. So I'm going to go to sheath search again. We're going to go past 18. And let's see what we find after 18. Okay, that's the sheath, that's the sheath, that's the sheath. Was that it? Okay, that was it for the sheath. So, there is one last one that Maury put in, and that is the Blue Ridge Warrant Service. He applied for a warrant on 1/5/23. And on or about, it came back 360 units of a purchase of 480. The knives were from a wholesaler in sheaths under Elon Financial. And then it goes on to say that it was just an email that was pursuant to the warrant, and nothing else was followed up. There was nothing else followed up in regards to Blue Ridge Warrant Service. So we still don't know if he had a report of any of these purchases from the sheath. But I'm going to do one more find, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to search by ISP. And I want you to see if I could find what I just found a little while ago. There's the narrative from that. I wish there was an easier way to find into Polar Penguin, transported evidence, signed for that. I booked the evidence into the lab. Detective Talbot with ISP spotted. There were no blood. A canvas area search. I looked for the 3 dumpsters. They found they pulled trash. There was some blood located on the 2nd floor of Taylor Avenue. They pulled that. And then arrest warrant for Koberger. Talks about that. ISP. I'm looking for something related to the sheath. And displaying front license plate. They talks about the license plate displayed. Kernoodle's belongings. Provided with that. Boxes wrapped up. ISP investigators. Danny Vargas. ISP. Trash collected. And then we have Schwenke, which basically proves that Koberger was using his card. They talked about the landowner that was involved in that. You can see, oh, okay, here we go. Brett Payne interview with Koberger. We know that ISP Detective Sergeant Gilbertson, Agent Shirley, and the author of this is Brett Payne. They went to go get Koberger in Pennsylvania on the 29th. I am still going to find the one that I had just found on this live dig with the sheath. And basically, this is the one where they pulled the trash on the 27th. This is the one that they found a sheath in the ditch. This is the K-bar order from the ISP. That's the tip that James Fry took. That's the one found in the mountains. Perhaps it's this one. Should have wrote it down. Oh, okay. This is the one, the eBay warrant. Now, if you look, it says, this is wild, guys. They wanted to know on eBay if anybody had bought these items between January 1st to present. So they got a response back from eBay, sorry. And these were the associated K-bar leather sheath with logo. There was a sale in Arizona, Idaho, Pennsylvania, Washington, Ohio, Wisconsin, New York, and then they redacted this whole one that didn't even give where it was and who it was. See that on that line? They redacted the whole entire, they didn't even tell us what state it was sold to. Then they had Texas, and it says JP. It says JP on the side. Maybe Japan? I don't know. And then Texas, Ohio, Washington, Arizona. There were no subscriber information with the IP address, payment information, or customer records that were provided. Okay, there was no association with that. But then there are user IDs that were associated, and obviously they're not going to put anything in here as these user IDs are associated with the knife sheath purchased before and after November 13th. I'm requesting the help from the prosecutor's office because he did find something. There was something in there that was totally redacted, totally 100% redacted, that they don't want us to see. Okay, so I'm going to go back again. I'm going to do another find. I'm going to do sheath because I'm still going to find the one that I want you to look at the date. This is interesting. So I'm going to go back to 13. So we have that one. We have it logged in evidence. That is where they found laying on the bed. And this is the forensic account from Walmart. That's the warrant that was served. And this was, hold on a minute. That was the one speaking to the Walmart staff, I believe. Let me see. Yep, this is, okay, this is Roninsky's follow-up from the interview. So he received a phone call. We already saw that one. That's the one with the tip of the college, the male college student looking for a ski mask, right? So how coincidental. And then we see the production of the warrant. That's the tip. Okay. Here's the interesting one. This was written by Dustin Blaker on 1/4/23. Transport of DNA profile to Ortham in Houston, Texas. Now get this. On November 21st, 2022, I traveled from Moscow to Meridian to drop off evidence at the state police. This is number 93. After getting evidence checked into the lab, I signed for a DNA profile which had been generated by the ISP forensic lab. This DNA profile was collected from a knife sheath which was found by ISP investigators from District 2 during the initial search of 1122 King Road. The sheath had been transported to the lab by a Idaho State Police troopers. The DNA profile was stored in a vial which was packaged in an evidence envelope by ISP lab technicians and properly sealed with evidence tape. I signed the package showing I was taking possession of it on 11/21/22, sometime between 16 and 1700 hours, 4:30 to 5. Once I took possession of the DNA profile, it stayed in the box provided to me by the ISP lab until 11/22 at around 3:30 in the afternoon. I removed it from the box and placed it in a small backpack. The backpack then stayed in my possession. The only time it was not physically holding the backpack when I went through TSA security at the Boise airport. I was able to see the backpack as it went through the security system and subsequent check of my carry-on TSA security badge. The envelope, the DNA sample, was never left in the backpack at any time during the security check by TSA. I arrived in Houston around 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. I traveled to Ortham, Inc., which is located at blank in the Woodlands. It's a pretty nice area in Texas. I arrived at Ortham around 3:10. I handed the envelope with the DNA profile to JF, employee for Ortham. We completed the chain of evidence paperwork both on the envelope and also on a form provided to me by Ortham. I have burned all these files to the DVD, which was booked into evidence. Okay. So they get this knife sheath. They fly Blaker over to Houston with this evidence on November 21. They find it on the 14th. Why did they not send it right away? Why was it held into evidence for whatever many days? There's no chain of custody for this evidence. It was put into evidence as number 11 on the date that I showed you earlier, but it wasn't sent off to the lab until I don't know how many days later, and what was the chain of custody on it then? Who could have had access to this? I mean, it's a small police department. I'm just saying, right? Don't you think that would have been, oh, we found evidence at the scene of the crime. You bag it up right away and you send it off for testing. Why would they wait that entire time? Is it really evidence? So obviously the defense wanted to use that it was planted by the real killer. Well, was it the real killer that maybe left it laying there? Or perhaps was it something else? Let's watch this video and tell me what you think. This is a piece of work investigation. What a piece of work.
Unsealed court filings are giving us a new look at some of the DNA evidence collected in Idaho, where someone murdered 4 college students.
So Laura Aguirre spoke with a forensic expert who takes a look at what's been found and what this could mean for the suspect in the case.
Yeah, I've thought about this for a long time.
Joseph Morgan is a professor of applied forensics at Jackson State University. He's been watching the case of Brian Kohberger closely, the man charged with the murders of 4 Idaho college students in their off-campus house in November of 2022. Morgan is paying close attention to the DNA evidence listed in court filings, like a 3-person mixture of unknown DNA taken from one of the nail clippings and bloodstains from unknown male sources. However,
they've got him with this, I think.
Morgan believes DNA taken off a bloody knife sheath is key to the case.
They would have had to have searched this microscopically very, very thoroughly. And when they came up with that hit, I'm sure that they were quite amazed.
Court filings show authorities used investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG, to connect that DNA to extended relatives of Brian Kohberger, and that a swab from Kohberger himself was found to be a statistical match.
This is probably where the defense is going to make the most hay in this case. They're going to say that this is not accepted, that it's bad practice, those sorts of things.
He's right. Defense lawyers are challenging the use accuracy and legality of the IgG methods used on open source databases, some that don't permit law enforcement use. The crime scene was demolished by the university in 2023.
The authorities there allowed them to tear down this house, which I think is a bad decision.
A judge entered not guilty pleas on Kohberger's behalf, and his trial is set for August. He faces the death penalty if convicted. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
Kohberger's defense team is now questioning a lead detective on the case. It all focuses on 2 pieces of evidence. 1, blood found on a handrail in the house, and 2, blood found on a glove outside the home. Now, during a hearing back in January, the detective says that investigators didn't pursue any other suspects because they had already ID'd Kohberger as the suspect. The court transcript alludes to the defense believing another unknown male could have been involved in the crime instead of Kohberger.
So, What are your thoughts on all this DNA? Is the knife sheath evidence? Or is it just something that was made up? What do you think? Was this really evidence? Because this was a single item left behind, the K-bar knife sheath. Obviously, it's become one of the most controversial pieces of evidence, guys, especially in this case. It was found beside one of the victims, allegedly carried by Koberger, and his DNA was on the snap. No blood, no fingerprints, no matching the knife. Why was it left so perfectly placed? Was it a mistake? Was it a message? I mean, we can dive into the strange timeline like we just did again, but the chain of custody concerns is very important here. What's your theory on how the DNA got placed on that knife sheath? Is it in fact evidence? Is that that was the only thing they were going to use as a smoking gun? Or was this a planted trap? No, I just read you the police document. It said it was laying. It wasn't partially under the victim or the comforter. It said it was laying next to them. That was my curiosity when I said, well, wait a minute. What in the world? Now, if I go back to the documents and I look at and do a search find, look at December 2nd. Forensic Services for DNA Processing. Let me grab the document so you can see it. On December 2nd, 2022, it was transferred to ISP Forensic Services for DNA processing. What? December 2nd. He flew it out to Ortham. And why would it come back December 2nd? December 2nd. What was so important that ISP had to take it for Forensic Services for DNA testing? I never understood that one. So on December 2nd. Did anybody see that in the document? December 2nd, 22. Let me do a search real quick. This is the live dig. If you guys just joined us, we are looking at the documents from Moscow Police Department on the website Justice for spelled out, all, ALL. And this is a downloadable PDF file that you can grab and search for yourself, just in case you're curious, like many of us here. We can search for ourselves and we can put 2 and 2 together. So I am looking for December 2nd. It was transferred to ISP Forensic Services for DNA processing. When they've already flown it out to Houston. So when did that chain of custody come back? When did the knife sheath come back into the care of Moscow Police Department evidence? I'm going to have to take a look at that again, because that's just a little sus to me. There's no chain of custody, allegedly, because the ISP lab found it inconclusive, which is funny because they use the same lab. So how does it go from inconclusive to it doubled in size to a match of Brian's dad? Because they went and did the trash pull, guys. They went and did the trash pull. Then they think about it. Think about it. They had to do a trash pull. So how did it become? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. It is normal to test again if they found nothing testing the snap. The FBI agents wrote a text message that found next to Ethan. Maybe she got it wrong, but how? They could have glanced and saw the sheath. M was put up against K, and they were covered by a blanket, but it was found on the right side of Maddie's body, laying there. I think we just all saw the police report that I read it exactly where it came from. So, Mogan. We can do another search real quick. Mogan, I'll show you my screen. Hold on. Let me search. Let me share this screen. So, how is it possible that they find the sheath, they fly it over to Ortham, they have it tested, and then ISP gets the sheath on December 2nd so they can do their own testing, and they come back with Brian Kohberger's DNA. So what was the evidence from Ortham? The snap was brass. It's impossible. Now, there is a time frame where metal does stay, fingerprints does stay on metal. But I think that's a long time for it to kind of logically be, I don't know, found on a snap. So let's look and see Mogan. So it was found placed. I believe that's the wording they use. Let's get the right wording here because I don't want to say the wrong wording. Let's look at this police report again. Here's the evidence. Okay, let's look. Mogan, they were seen talking on camera. 29. There's 49 times that Mogan was mentioned in these reports. Let's see exactly where it was placed. Mogan's bedroom. Okay. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogan's right side when viewed from the door. So the sheath was laying on the bed. Okay, laying on the bed. And it did say they were both covered by a pink blanket. They were covered. Okay, that's Xana. She was covered. Covered. Hold on. Oh, I should have searched pink, but oh yeah, let me search pink. I remember saying that they were both covered by a pink blanket. It'll probably pull up Maddie's shirt color, Pink. Yep. Pink and white blanket with red hearts. Pink jacket. Pink sleeve shirt. Pink comforter. Pink coat. Now I know they said they were covered. I might have to use the word covered. And Ethan was covered. So covered shows up 22 times. They recovered, discovered, discovered, covered. The male, Ethan, was covered in blood, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Discovered, recovered, covered, discovered, covered, discovered, recovered, covered, 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 were covered. Both females were covered in yada, yada, yada. Covered. I remember it says they were covered with the blanket. Let me search blanket, because that has been something that I've seen floating around. They weren't covered. Yeah, they were, according to these reports. A blue blanket. 9. Blankets around them, standing outside. Their friends were all outside in blankets. It must have been really cold. Blanket. Okay. This is Ethan. He was laying on his back in bed with some type of blanket pulled over his midsection. So if Ethan was covered in his midsection, they didn't see his legs from the doorway or from wherever. It was covering his midsection. That's the way I read that. The blankets were covering his midsection, unless his legs were exposed. I don't know. It doesn't say very, very clearly. And it did say that the girls were covered with a pink, bloody blanket. I remember seeing that. So there answers that question. So, if this chain of custody was questionable and the judge did not throw it out due to chain of custody, because there has to be a certain rule of evidence that you have to go by in the IRE. There is chain of custody, yada, yada, yada. I don't know how they were going to try to convict him on a fingerprint questionable, on a knife sheath, questionable DNA that appears that it probably was botched evidence, allegedly. And there is no way you can fully trace the chain of custody from the scene to Ortham to ISP. I mean, how did the ISP get the sheath back from Othram? How did they get it back? There was no chain of custody from the scene to ISP or to show when the DNA results came back. Nothing. So what was the DNA? Could it have been his? So we talked about the precise and isolated placement of the sheath. It was located laying next to the bed. The knife was the presumed, obviously we haven't found it. No one's found it. It's not found. Yet the sheath was deliberately left, not dropped near the doorway or the hallway, or like anyone has speculated that she ran back downstairs and he dropped the sheath on whatever show that you've watched that has said that. That's not accurate. And the sheath was immediately visible, not hidden, which seems inconsistent with a premeditated murder where the killer would avoid leaving any identifying evidence behind, especially for a PhD criminology student studying crime scenes. I mean, just little tiny errors left and right, especially from someone who has motor control movement, visual snow, couldn't have done this under 7 minutes. And it was a single source DNA on the button snap. And the only reported DNA found on the sheath was a single source male DNA on the bottom snap. There's no mention of any other DNA or prints on this sheath. Leather holds fingerprints longer, the grease and the leather, like the edges or the side or the high touch areas during removal, the back side. It raises a lot of questions in my mind why there was no other touch DNA found except for the ones on the, they led us to believe, on the button sheet, on the snap. If you've touched that leather sheath over and over, there has to be some type of other touch DNA on the porous, I mean, it is porous leather, but yet if it had been touched that night, it should have had something else on it. So we've got the discrepancies I talked about in the chain of custody, the labeling, you know, it's brief, it's generalized, the proximity of the victims and other evidence. I mean, you heard about the glove, you heard about the blood on the railing. You know, there's no blood on the sheath, or, I mean, they didn't mention anything like that. It doesn't match. This piece of evidence does not match the rest of the crime scene chaos. It is highly suspicionable, if that's a word, allegedly, that it might have been planted laying next to a victim. I don't think it was dropped. You can't drop a knife sheath like that. It has to come off a belt loop. And if you're carrying it in a pocket, you don't just accidentally drop it in the heat of the moment. Was it a military K-bar use knife? That's tactical or military. It may imply its intentional use of a military style weapon, possibly for intimidation or symbolic reasons. Yet there's no K-bar that was ever found. All the tips, all the knives in this scenario, nothing has matched. And don't let me get into the missing items that I've discovered. I will share that in my next live. Because in these documents on Justice for All, FOURALL.com, there's more missing than just a knife. Drop your thoughts in your comments. Make sure you like and follow and subscribe. It doesn't cost anything to become a member. All my lives are free. Anything you donate will go to the upkeep of the website so we can keep that web going. I will add more. Thank you so much for Summer, Marissa, I am definitely watching, guys. I'm watching. I'm watching the chat and I'm watching everything that's happening on the side. I'm just not addressing it right now because I want to stay focused. But I do read the chat. So place the wording. I remember the hearing. Yeah, placed is the wording. In the documents, in the place documents, it does say laying. But placed is a good reasoning to use in this situation. If it was on a belt, it would have a broken belt loop. Absolutely. I agree. Totally agree. It could have been placed in a hoodie pocket. Doesn't necessarily have to be on a belt. True. Very true. But some of these experienced knife users don't need a sheath. They keep it in their pocket, believe it or not, on canvas, say, what do they call, waiters, or kind of like overalls. Yeah, it's in the PCA. So thank you so much for getting on board on this live dig. Let's drop a question if you've got one below. I'm going to go back and read through the chat, make sure everyone got their say. Walmart sells K-bar knives. No, they don't. Most of them don't. It's special order online. There's a few retailers that sell them, distributors. Phoenix, can you tell us what job Brett Payne is doing for the college? I don't know, but I did hear that he was hired by the college. I don't know what job he's doing. And let's see what else. Oh, let me go back to this real quick. This is a good comment. Evidence 590 and 690 are guns. So there were a few guns found, and I can go back to the document. You go back to the document, search Glock, and it'll tell you the date that it was found. That date coincides with 1/21/23. That is the evidence that was found inside Koberger's mom's and dad's home. So that will be in Pennsylvania in the PCA on the website. So you can actually see that document. The second gun is a Glock, which is gold-plated, and the second choice of a backup gun for law enforcement. Why is there no evidence in these reports? Well, let me just go over to PCA, Pennsylvania, Koberger, and I'll pull it up and I'll show you. This PCA that is listed on Philadelphia's website is unredacted. If you type in PCA Pennsylvania Koberger, there actually is inside on their website is the actual search warrant evidence. They do have a website you can go to easy, and you can actually pull it up, and that will show you all the evidence. So there is a website that you can go to, and you can double check those. Now, I didn't see what type of Glock it is, because in regards to the documents given in the evidence file in Pennsylvania, it did not specify. It did not specify. So I'm going to show you this tab real quick. Hopefully you guys can see it. Let me delete this and show you this. This is, and let me remove this. This is the case, these are the case documents on Philadelphia's website, the Commonwealth versus Koberger. And if you go to those documents, you can see there's about, I don't know, 12 or 13, 14 documents in there. And it does say search warrant, inventory of Koberger. Now, in this inventory of Koberger, hopefully you guys can see this. Let me share this one instead. They did not give a very accurate, good description to be able to go through this document to say, oh, yeah, they just wrote it out. Hold on one second for me, guys. Okay, sorry, y'all, I had to tinkle. So when you look at the documents, hopefully you can see these documents. And let me just put this up on my screen. Okay. So when you go in and you open that tab, evidence, downloads, and hopefully you can see that. Okay. Let me see. Can you guys see this on my screen? No. Why not? These are the documents. Why can't you see this? Let me do another one. All right, I'm going to pull up this and then you can see my screen. Hold on. Why is this not pulling in? This was the search warrant, and then they have the evidence. You guys see that now? Nope. How about now? Yep. Okay. So here is the evidence and the authorized search warrant. And if you go down to about, I don't know, in the middle of the page, it says that they took into evidence the property of the Elantra, and they did a minor. I mean, this is like, they could have done a little bit better. They picked up swabs, zip-back baggie. They picked up, obviously, some other things, reflective vest, used water bottles, Band-Aids, wrappers, maps, seatbelt, whatever. And that was the Elantra. But when you go down and scroll down in these documents, it will give you a whole inventory list of what they took out of the residence. And that is when you'll see all the documents. Scroll down, that's the PCA. It is unredacted. You can see who did the autopsies for them. They have the whole PCA. It is completely unredacted. They did not redact anything in their system. So if anybody wants to see the unredacted PCA, this is where you find it. And in the other documents, you can go ahead and see petition, search warrants. You can see criminal activity. You can see the summons. Let me see. There's another document in here that shows the actual inventory, warrant application, warrants, home, search and authorization. Let's see if this one will pull up the actual document. I've made plenty of videos on this. There are mostly on my TikTok. I haven't moved some of them over. So here is a complete, hopefully you can see this. Here's a complete second document, and that is 185614. So in this one, they found 4 medical style gloves and a flashlight, Arizona, something large jean t-shirt, found some Under Armour socks, black shorts, boxers. I mean, they go into detail of everything they found, right? Because this is the warrant. And they have to have something. Basically told them what to look for. Then they have another copy. This is a totally different one. This is another copy of the PCA that they had authorization to find whatever they could find. And then you go down and all the way to the bottom. But they do have another one that lists the 3 knives, the 2 warrant exhibits, inventory exhibits. So you can go in there. It is in one of these, by the way. So if you want to search it, go ahead and search it. The information's out there and available. And another thing I found on the report said the Elantra pin dismissed is what's registered to Jamie. Yeah, that I talked about that like weeks ago. Brett Payne pin dismissed. That car was registered to Jesse James Bailey. Yeah, I talked about that a while back. Banned from Idaho court site and Pennsylvania site. I'm in Australia. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm going to get off here. I can't believe I've already been on an hour and a half. I'm going to get off here. I'm going to take a break, and I will be on Birdie tonight. We are scheduled to go live. We're going to go live with his theory tonight. So let me go through and see if there's any other comments that needed to be answered. But I think let's go through these. Why would they say it's not his blood and trace have gotten? Yeah, it's. I don't think. He wasn't even in the house, and that is exactly why the defense said he wasn't in or around the house. Had it been planted, I heard 2 reports then. Payne didn't see it the first time through. No, it was the second pass through. And I originally found next to Ethan. Repeat Phoenix. I don't know what you wanted me to repeat. Sorry. Okay, so did you guys enjoy this live dig? Did you learn anything new? I just felt like digging through it live would show you other things. When you read the position of M, and how could they have glanced? I saw, yeah, there's, I know, guys, there's a lot of misinformation out there. The FBI agent's wife wrote in a text message that it was found next to Ethan. Maybe she got it wrong, but how? I don't even remember seeing any FBI agent's text message from his wife. Yeah, that's dangerous. Was that the leak, maybe? Anyone know? Hellbear, was it the dude, Chris, in this? Oh, God, I don't even want to talk about him. That makes me so mad. And you know what? Nancy Grace, whoever's floating that interview around, is so disgusting. So freaking disgusting. How could they be floating around gosh, I wish I could have a rant. But I'm going to refrain. Everyone sharing that Nancy Grace. Well, let me just show you. You guys, if you haven't seen it yet, I'll throw it on the end here as a bonus. Let me pull it up. Let's just Nancy Grace. She's getting some bad info. Of course, I've been commenting. Haven't you seen the police reports? Do you believe this crap? How can you believe the narrative they're pushing? Oh my gosh, y'all. Oh my gosh. It says 2 days ago. Okay. Let me share this with you. I just about died when I saw this video, y'all. I was like, does she know what she's spewing? Is someone setting her up for a downfall? I often. This woman is so full of herself. I used to like Nancy Grace. I really did. I believe that she did her due diligence, especially as a prosecutor. You would think that she would be on the ball. But this is what happens when you trust others with writing your own narrative, your own. I mean, if I had that creative flair, I would still be doing my own due diligence, right? I mean, you have to. You can't just trust somebody else to give you the information to share. It's just a scary thought, guys. But let's listen to what Nancy Grace had to say, and it's been floating around everywhere. Idaho for murder details. If the world had known, no Koberger plea deal. Here's a bonus. Let's hope that it streams on my. Come on. All right, let's make it a little bit bigger for you guys.
Breaking news tonight, the Idaho 4 murder details. If the world had known what we know now, there would never have been a Brian Koberger plea deal. This would have gone to the death penalty. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper?
Details only now being revealed to the public. Injuries and more details.
I had to interject real quick. So Olivia said that he was trying to be a rapper. I went back and I found out that SoundCloud was made after his arrest. Now, I don't know if that was him trying to rap, but that account was made after his arrest, just so you know.
Would never have been a plea deal. The public would have rioted at the courthouse steps. We are learning that one of these beautiful co-eds stabbed 30 times, another even more. Kelly Gonsalves's face so many times she is disfigured and beyond identification. It goes on and on. Why was all of this kept secret? So everyone would accept the plea deal and think it was for the best? Thank you for being with us, with me, an all-star panel. But first, straight out to Joe Scott Morgan, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, star of a hit podcast, Body Bags with Joe Scott Morgan, and author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon. Joe Scott, I can hardly take it in what we are learning. First of all, Joe Scott, listen to this.
Officers responding to the 911 call from 1122 King Road find the kitchen door ajar. During a walk through the rental house, officers notice blood is smeared on the walls and floors and pooling by the bodies on different floors of the house. 3 of the 4 victims were stabbed multiple times, and officers were unable to sort out additional injuries. Injuries were so bad to one of the victims, an officer said the victim was unrecognizable.
Unrecognizable. And before you weigh in, Joe Scott, I want you to hear this as well.
Kaylee Gonsalves had already moved out of the King Road home, but returned to show her best friend Maddie her new Range Rover. An officer on scene described her face as disfigured. Kaylee's fatal injuries included a left lung laceration, a liver laceration, 2 subdural bleeds, and a stab behind her clavicle, which cut her subclavian vein and artery. She had signs of sharp force injuries and blunt force injuries and was the only victim to suffer asphyxia injuries.
Kaylee Gonsalves was stabbed 34 times. Her facial structure was extremely damaged, leaving her unrecognizable due to the severity of the stab wounds, and she was identified by methods other than simple visual recognition. Besides defensive marks on her arms, Kaylee had a broken nose, 2 brain bleeds, and a stab behind her clavicle, which severed the subclavian vein and artery.
Joe Scott, that's just one of the victims. Can you imagine what she lived through? No wonder her father, Steve Gonsalves, is beside himself. These facts kept secret from the public until after the deal goes down. I don't like it.
No, I don't. And this far, the level of trauma here, Nancy, far exceeded my expectation. Okay. From what I've been hearing, these many years that we've been covering these cases, I did not expect it to be to this degree. The brutality here that has been exacted on these kids is unimaginable. The trauma, the proximity to these individuals per the perpetrator. I mean, this is an asymmetrical attack where he would literally have to be on top of a couple of these victims, just kind of hammering down on them, not just with the blade itself, but also inducing this blunt force trauma, which many of these victims have sustained, Nancy. There's also other evidence other than just force injury. We've got indication that markings left behind may have been generated as a result of potentially punching.
Okay, well, let me make sense of what you are just saying, okay, because you use a lot of technical terms. Kelly Gonsalves was asphyxiated, okay? There were marks on her mouth. There were other signs that she had been suffocated or strangled.
Now, you heard Nancy Grace just say that there were other signs allegedly of asphyxiation. So she was strangled, rope, hands, whatever. Now, I will say this with a very graphic warning since we're talking about this right now, that it was alleged that Kaylee was so unrecognizable because they damaged her face so much that if she was lifted, her jaw fell apart. And that is what they're referring to.
But what is so shocking to me amongst all of this, it's all shocking, is that there are multiple stabs to the face. Susan Hendricks is joining me. She has been camped outside the county courthouse there from the get-go, author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi. There she did another deep, deep look at the Delphi murders. Susan Hendricks, am I understanding this correctly? All the injuries sustained by Kelly, and that's not even the worst. I think Maddie Mogan had even more stab wounds, but all of these stab wounds to the face, Susan Hendricks?
Yes, to me, that shows a deep rooted hate and envy for those women. You're absolutely right, Nancy, when you say, no wonder Steve was so furious. And he didn't even, the coroner said they were likely sleeping. What? That almost sounds deliberate to turn the people off, to say, oh, nothing to see here, and knocking down the house. I mean, these injuries horrific. You're right. Maddie Mogan, wounds to the face. Xana Kernodle, more than 50 stab wounds. 50. It's unbelievable.
50 to Xana. Xana, 50 stab wounds. And what's so crazy about this is, let me go to a shrink. Dr. John Delatorre is joining us, and I want to follow up on what Susan Hendricks just said. Delatorre, psychologist specializing in forensic psychology. All these wounds to the face. Now, I'm just a trial lawyer, okay? But this means something psychologically. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't care if the angel Gabriel came down and told me nothing, I'd have to call him a liar. Because when you stab a woman in the face 50 times, or in this case, Keely Gonzalez 20 times, Dr. John Delatorre, what does it mean?
Other guests are going to talk about the level of hate and animosity towards it, but for me, he literally tried to erase her. He literally tried to erase her identity from, she couldn't even exist as a human being anymore. That's the level of brutality that we're dealing with here. When he walked into that room, he imagined that she would no longer exist as a human. That's what he was searching for. That's what he was doing with all of this stuff. And whatever way that he could accomplish that, he was going to spend the time necessary. Because imagine how much time that he has to spend for, choking and then stabbing all across her body, and then the amount of times on her face. That takes time. That's not something that's just easily done. So he wanted to do this specifically to her, to erase her identity from this planet.
What is so bizarre, Dr. Delatorre, is that he was not insane. Not insane now, not insane then, not temporary insanity at the time. And when you look at him as he's sitting there in sentencing, and he's looking, as some described it, and Susan was there, when he was looking at the victims' families, crying and snotting and begging for the truth, he was described as like looking like a hawk watching its prey, enjoying watching it squirm. And this is the guy that stabbed this young girl up to 50 times in the face, the body. But I've read a lot of studies, and I put a lot of experts on the stand, Dr. Delatorre, that explain that when an attacker specifically attacks a woman's face or her genitals, it's an anti-woman thing. He is destroying her beauty. And there have been a lot of analyses on Koberger, implicating him as an incel, an involuntary celibate that hates women because he can't get women. Explain what this all means, the attack to the victim's face. Not just one. Kelly was totally disfigured. Dylan couldn't even identify her. You heard that she had to be identified by means other than a visual identification, like you see in the movies and TV. P.S. That doesn't happen anymore, where the loved one is brought in and they pull the sheet back. That doesn't happen anymore. But when they asked Dylan who was that, she couldn't identify Kelly, right? That's how bad it was. She was stabbed so many.
Wait a minute. Why did she say Dylan couldn't identify her? What was that all about? Was that just some bogus information given out? Because according to what we've seen and in the reports, it never says that Dylan couldn't identify her. I never heard that before either. That's new. What was Dylan actually there? That's a whole nother chapter.
Times in the face.
This is clearly gender-based hatred. Clearly gender-based hatred. When we talk about incels, what we need to remember is that they're primarily an online forum in which all of these, sad sack losers blame women for all of their problems. Now, when we look at Koberger, we can certainly see that there are elements in which he viewed women as being subservient, as not being qualified to be in the same as him. But there's a level of hatred here when it comes to these behaviors that he's been fostering for a long period of time. He's had to learn to control all these behaviors. And that's why I think you saw him the way that we all saw him when it came to the victim statements. He's taking it all in. He's listening to it. He's in control, so he believes. And he's not going to let anybody see what's underneath the hate.
Hello, Nancy Grace here. To all of you homeowners, when's the last time you checked on your home title? If the answer is never, well, this is for you. Scammers steal home titles. Your equity is the target. Criminals forge your signature, and just like that, your home title is transferred out of your name. And that is why we partnered with Home Title Lock. So you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use our promo code Nancy.
I'm a victim of watching this
HometitleLock.com for a free title history report, plus a free trial of the $1 million triple lock protection.
$1 million
that includes
triple lock.
24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does happen, they will spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's Home Title Law
Premium. I shouldn't get any commercials.
Promo Nancy.
I shouldn't get
We
any
learn from
promo
inmates
codes.
behind bars now that he obsessively washes his hands over and over and over, and will spend over an hour in the shower behind bars. So the dichotomy of him obsessively cleaning himself, but yet stabbing these victims up to 50 times each. Then we see him, Susan Hendricks, as you did.
Well, that doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing about what happened to these individuals. I'm laughing about his excessive hand washing, his excessive glove wearing that has been going on since COVID. Does anybody else have a germophobia child in their house, a relative, a family member, a loved one that are just germophobic? Raise your hands. Raise your hands, because I'll tell you, wash their hands all the time, chapped dry hands, and they have to use lotion. And yes, okay, some of you get it. Some of you get it. I wash my hands so much. Yeah, I mean, I used to wash my hands so much they chapped until I learned to keep the the grease that we have on our hand that is natural and normal, and don't wash my hands so much. But I'm not like such a germaphobe that I have to wear gloves everywhere. I spend over my son with autism spends as much time as he can in the shower, and we have to beat it into him. It's not really beat, but into his head that we have got to limit our water consumption. Okay, he could stay in there for an hour if I let him. But she's a 4 inches wide. Oh, I love it. Okay, so you got my hands cracking, yeah. So you guys get it. Some people are just that way, but this is OCD to the 10th level extreme. Okay, that's all we're witnessing.
In the sentencing.
And I don't mean to sound mean, but Brian Koberger would probably be the individual driving to work during COVID with gloves and a mask on, and him being the only person in the car, okay?
And he did. He looked like a hawk staring at a little varmint caught in its talons, just watching it squirm. He liked it, Susan.
Yeah, he absolutely loved it. And I think he, for lack of a better term, got off on the women going up to the podium. Besides Olivia Gonzalez, he did not like her. I could tell by his clenched jaw, but with the women, the surviving roommates crying. And he also didn't like the men. And Kelly's father turning the podium. And on the podium, it said, "Do not move." He didn't listen, focused right at Koberger and said, "You picked the wrong family." And by the way, they had heard about the 30+ stab wounds with Kaylee right before.
Hey, Susan. You know what,
Yeah.
Susan? Spare me. Okay.
I'm hoping
Because
that
he got
it
off.
affected him.
He's living. He's
know.
breathing, and I and you and the victims' families are paying for it. And what I want to know, if you have any idea why all this was kept secret until after the deal was done and it couldn't be undone. There would have been a mob on the courthouse steps if they had known Kelly, for one, like the others, was so attacked, brutally stabbed. And think about it, Joe Scott, maybe I'm not explaining this well. The K-bar knife, and you got the same exact K-bar knife, as did I. To think of that knife in this girl's face, 30 times that we know of, and many of those wounds were overlapping, so you can't differentiate 1 versus 2 versus 3 if the stab comes down in the same spot in her face. This guy is laughing at everybody. He's probably writing a book right now.
Yeah, he is. And I'm sure that there are academics out there that are salivating at the opportunity to get to sit in a cell with him. And he's going to have control now, Nancy. He's going to have control of the conversation because he was not forced to allocute. I'll keep preaching that over and over again. An academic will go in there and he will get ready for him to be able to tell his side of the story. Let me tell you one more if you like that one. This is what I believe. I believe that there is probably an institution out there somewhere around the world that will allow him in prison to complete his PhD. Just chew on that for a second. After what he did to these kids over and over and over again, he brutalized each and every one of them to the point where you've got one child that's completely unrecognizable, and you've got another one that sustained so many stab wounds that you cannot begin to fully appreciate the savagery, I don't think, that she went through in those last moments of her life. And one more thing about Ethan, you know, that image that we've seen for years and years now of that streaking down the side of the house. Well, Nancy, that turns out that was positively examined, and it turns out that was Ethan's blood. As a forensic scientist, I'm not going to look at an image, and you can take this to the bank. I've never said that was blood. But after they have released this information, they've said that's his blood. That gives you an idea relative to the volume of terror, the volume of trauma that these kids were subjected to. And it's actually visualized on the outside of that house.
Not only that, Joe Scott, the evidence that Kelly Gonzalez was asphyxiated. It's not just all the stab wounds to the face.
Yep.
He silenced her. Listen,
Damage around her mouth, suggesting Koberger tried to silence or gag her in some way. The family lawyer suggested a second weapon was used to inflict blunt force trauma to her face, while others believe the trauma could have been caused by the butt of the K-bar knife. Haley's asphyxia injuries were caused by blunt force trauma to her face and mouth area, potentially alongside other forms of restriction.
This was caused by the butt of his knife. Is that like pistol whipping somebody with the butt of a gun, but you're doing it with the butt of that K-bar? What does this mean?
No, what it means is when this knife was developed, Nancy, for the Marine Corps to use in the field, they use it for a variety of things. Did you know that in combat, you can use this as a bludgeon? Look at that. What does it look like? It looks like the leading edge of a hammer, doesn't it? And this thing is steel. So as you're driving it down like a piston, you're actually driving it down into the tissue. That's going to explain a lot of the fractures that you might see with her face potentially, because he's in such close proximity to her as he's traumatizing her.
Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022.
I'm sorry, I can't listen to her. I'm gonna have to forward this real quick. Let's see.
Mortgage payments.
Oh
It's
God,
not just
not
a
you.
dream. That would equal money in your pocket. .net/. You're seeing Koberger there in the sentencing of the person that carried out these knowing but frenzied acts on the victim. 50 stab wounds, 30 stab wounds, disfiguring Kelly's face with a K-bar knife and the butt of the knife. What was he
Amanda, we'll
like
see you
in
later.
that sentencing?
Nancy, there was no at all stoic, staring straight ahead. The only time I saw any facial expression is when he walked in the beginning and then after the break and smiled towards his mother. Other than that, my dad was watching at home and said, he has to be on medication. What? He's making zero movement. I said, no, he doesn't have the feelings. They're just not there.
Guys,
sedated.
Compare his demeanor in the courtroom to the frenzied attack on the victims. Listen.
The severity of Kaylee's injuries was such that even roommate Dylan Mortensen initially misidentified Kaylee as Xana due to the disfigurement. Xana Kernodle was awake, and her order from Jack in the Box had just been delivered when she appears to have heard something going on in the room upstairs occupied by Maddie and Kaylee. As Xana is on the stairs leading upstairs, she was confronted by Koberger exiting Maddie's room, and he attacks Xana as she attempts to retreat to her room.
Joining me is Chris McDonough, director of Cold
Oh,
Case
God.
Foundation, former homicide detective who has scoured the scene as well.
Speaking
I
of
want you
Chris,
to hear this and then give me your analysis of how Xana was attacked by Koberger. It's nothing like we were told at the beginning, like Susan Hendricks was saying, oh, they all were killed in their sleep.
no, they weren't.
Okay, like they drifted off to death. It's anything but. Listen to this, Chris.
Maybe they'll catch
Koberger
on.
attacks Xana, but she puts up a fight and sustains more than 50 stab wounds. Many of Xana's wounds are defensive wounds, and a gash on her left hand between her index finger and thumb, as well as blunt force injuries on her body. A life and death struggle between Xana and Koberger took place in her room. Xana's fatal injuries were identified as a laceration to her right lung and 2 lacerations to her heart.
So he was stabbing her so brutally. He lacerated her lung and twice to the heart. Was he just sitting on top of her, just stabbing her over and over and over? But what about this? You've had a lot of theories about the way this thing went down. And if the public, if the world had known what we're learning now, I think the courthouse would have been surrounded by torches and pitchforks, for Pete's sake, not to let that sweetheart deal go through. It sounds like Xana hears something. She was awake because she had just gotten that order from Jack in the Box. She hears something going on upstairs in the room occupied by Maddie and Kelly. She's on the stairs that lead to upstairs, and then it's then she's confronted by Koberger. Give me your scenario.
Nancy, I mean, we've talked about this many times on your show. Just think about this idea of the frenzy that's taking place on the third floor that Doc Delatorre and Doc Morgans are talking about, where this guy is trying to erase everybody that he's contacting with. And now you have this young, innocent, human being who hears what's going on upstairs, interrupts it, and then he turns on her like the wolf that he is, and then slaughters her. I think that was probably the time he dropped the sheath because he's in this frenzy.
Joe Scott, describe the injuries to Xana.
Xana, the interesting thing about her injuries, Nancy, is that she's got multiple defensive injuries. That's why I use the term that she fought. This was like a Titan-like fight. She knows that her life is coming to an end, or she's trying to avoid it. And so she's got multiple injuries where she's.
Okay. I hope y'all are. Let me check the pulse of the chat. Type a 1 if you're still with me. Because I'm going to tell you something real quick that I thought about months ago that I should have shared. Now that we have the documents that came out. They wanted to make us all believe all 4 of these people were asleep. But the only way that they could make us believe that maybe one of them was awake was to order a DoorDash, because it would look like everyone fought. Think about that. They needed to have an alibi for the DoorDash, or somebody ordered the DoorDash to make them believe that Xana was awake and the only one that fought. But in fact, other people were awake now, and now we know that Kaylee fought, not just from what her dad was saying, but now what the reports are saying and what the autopsy said inside those reports. What are your thoughts on that?
Raising her arm like this and her hand, and these cuts run onto her arm where if you're talking about sword play or knife play, you're talking about a term called a parry, where you're trying to defend yourself like this. Do you remember, Nancy, the first bit of physical trauma information that was actually leaked out in this case had to do specifically with Xana, and it had to do with the fact that the knife had been drawn through her hand to the point where her tendons were cut. And I knew at that moment in time, that was several months ago, it seems like now, I knew at that time that she had fought ferociously. I just didn't realize, Nancy, that this was going to wind up with a total of 50 injuries to this diminutive young woman. And I see this, and then I see that reptile in court, and I think about this is no match here physically. He's showing up with a combat knife, and he is literally just full of anger and rage. I'm not saying that Xana was the target. I'm saying, like Chris had said, that she became kind of like an impediment to him getting ready to exfil out of that house. She got in his way, and Katie barred the door at that point in time. The totality of his rage is taken out on her at this point in the aftermath.
Joining me now is a veteran trial lawyer, Greg Morse, criminal defense attorney at Morse Legal, author of The Untested on Amazon. Greg, there's no need to argue with me about guilt or innocence because he's already pled guilty. All right. He's behind bars right now, and you're going to hear this, Greg. He's got a tablet. He's got an iPad. He can watch movies. He can communicate with the outside world. Got email. He can listen to music. He can have his vegan diet. He can write books. There is no Son of Sam law in Idaho, which means he can make money off of his books and his appearances if he dials into some no Son of Sam protection laws in Idaho. He can zoom in from his laptop to the next criminal defense gala and give his side. He didn't speak, of course, at sentencing. He won't be cross-examined. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on. He can have visits from women. He can have girlfriends. Look at Jorn Vandersloot. He's had 2 children behind bars. It goes on. Greg Morse, I want to talk to you about why these incendiary, think about that word, incendiary. What is an incendiary device? Like a Molotov cocktail. You throw it, it hits, and it blows up and destroys everything around it. These incendiary facts are now being released after the deed is done, Greg. And I think that is wrong.
Well, it's not. It's that the case is over, and I'd be shocked if all the family members didn't have access to this and they wanted to with the prosecutor. You know, you were a prosecutor, Nancy. Criminal law is not for the media. It happens in the courtroom and in offices, and it's very different than what gets played out in public. And at the end of the day, while you can look at these facts and say they're right, they're aggravating factors. If this were the death penalty and we moved on to the death penalty phase of the case, he went to trial and was convicted, the government would be obviously putting all of these extreme violence that he did to these people as aggravating factors that warrant the death penalty. However, all of that being said, that doesn't bring solace. It doesn't change the fact that he has multiple sentences. The family will not feel
I'm not asking you about solace. I'm certainly not asking a criminal defense attorney to speak to the suffering of crime victims. You represent guys. Okay, let's just get that straight. Okay, that's what you do. I'm asking you about the fact that these incendiary details were kept secret. And yes, I understand that they were kept secret for a reason. But in my mind, this is justification to seek the death penalty, not to have him laid up, washing his hands with Purell, watching an X-rated video on his iPad. No.
Well, again,
and now we're learning Kelly was disfigured with a K-bar knife to the face, 30 times?
He needs to stop and scream at her.
I didn't need
Why do
to
we even
read
have
all
the
of
death
the
penalty?
information. I didn't. Well, you're right. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't stop crime. There are people in the Idaho maximum prison since 1985 that are still waiting for execution. Nobody doesn't commit a crime because someone got the death penalty. Those type of cases do not lead to that result. The death penalty is a waste. All it would do in this case is not
Okay, I
bring
didn't ask
closure
you
to the
again to
family.
start preaching the pros and cons of the
I'm
death
not
penalty.
preaching.
I'm telling
But you're
you and asking you,
mischaracterizing the
you think the
reality of
public would have
this.
gone along with this deal if they had known the
Who
truth?
cares? The public's irrelevant.
Me,
It's about
I
the
care.
victims. That's all that matters. But no one cares. You're not in the case. Nobody cares. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't matter. It matters. I don't matter. It's those victims' families that matter. And prosecutors, you were one. You have to make a hard choice in difficult situations. And there is absolutely no
You know
doubt
what, Greg Morris?
that
It does matter. It does matter because
No, but the
prosecutors
death
are
penalty doesn't do
entrusted to
anything.
do the right
Okay.
thing. This was not the
But what-
right thing. To stab a young girl in the face 30 or more times with that thing right there, and nobody knows that until now.
I have never seen anyone put Nancy in their
you
place.
keep saying you don't matter, I don't matter. That's BS. We do matter. Every voice matters. Every voice matters. He was entrusted with doing the right thing by the public, doing the right thing for the public, people in Idaho. And this was not the right thing. Now we're learning about all of these disgusting facts. I mean, Joe Scott, you've scoured the medical examiner's report. What repels you the most, if you can even pick?
I don't know that I can. I can't narrow it down because it's so vast. Nancy, out of all the cases certainly that I've covered in the media, this far surpasses when you're talking about an edged weapon. I've never seen this. Nancy, I never saw it in all my years in practice in New Orleans and Atlanta. I've never seen four people this disfigured, this brutalized in one location with one case. This far exceeds anything that I can imagine. But also there's one other element here, and this might be more of a John comment, but the idea that the terror that they lived in those final moments. And I don't know that we can take the measure, I think, on trauma. You can't take the measure on what they went through in those final moments, Nancy. It's something that you cannot absolutely quantify.
Madison Mogan might have been asleep when Brian Koberger
Oh,
snuck into
guys.
the room to attack.
Did you all catch that? Now they're twisting the words. Did you hear that? Might have been asleep. And yes, according to the report, she was stabbed 30 times, but according to, I believe, a family member, most of it was to the face and the neck. Now they're starting to say, might have been asleep.
Had defensive wounds to her forearms and hands, indicating she was not stabbed to death in her sleep with no awareness to what was happening. Her death was caused by lacerations to her liver and left lung from sharp force injuries, and she suffered a gash extending from her eye to her nose. On the third floor, Kaylee and Madison are found together in a bed under a pink blanket covered in blood. There is a large pool of blood near Kaylee's midsection and blood spatter on the walls. The officer notes Maddie appears to be laying up against Kaylee, and Maddie has what appear to be wounds to her forearm and hands. A gash from under her right eye appears to go from the corner of her eye to her nose. The officer notes Kaylee is unrecognizable as her facial structure is extremely damaged.
Not another commercial.
Hi, guys. Nancy Grace here. Are you worried about harmful
force injuries, and the fatal injury was a stab wound under his left clavicle. This wound severed his subclavian vein and subclavian artery, as well as his jugular vein.
Talk like that would have thrown me completely over the edge of a cliff if I were trying this case. You have to have the medical examiner explain in regular people talk what he's saying. What he's saying is that Ethan was likely attacked in his sleep, his body found lying in bed, partially under a blanket covering his midsection. And bottom line, Susan Hendricks, his jugular vein was sliced. There was arterial bleeding, which likely went all the way up to the ceiling. That's what happened to this beautiful young boy. Explain, Susan Hendricks.
Absolutely. And the authorities who first came into that room says there was blood smeared all over the walls. And I go back to the coroner saying they were likely killed in their sleep at a horror scene, like a movie, all around that house. And the attorney mentioned, defense attorney, who matters? Guess who felt like they didn't matter? All of the family members. And Kaylee's father has been saying that from the start, and he didn't even know the extent of the injuries. So much so they mattered that they only had 24 hours. They found out via email that there was a plea deal that was reached. They felt like they didn't matter. They were a secondary thought.
Okay, Greg Morse, you can put that, let me just put it mildly.
Well,
I can think of a lot of places you could shove that, but I'll just say, put it in your pipe and smoke it.
Let's correct the mischaracterization.
This deal was already done and sealed before the family got to even talk about it.
The victim and the families matter, not the panelists. And also, correct the information. Son of Sam laws.
She's talking about the victim's family.
Unconstitutional. So just to say who matters, what I'm talking about is the public's view for justice, mercy, whatever matter. It's about the victim's family, the prosecutor. So we're talking about this in a vacuum, but the prosecutor's spoken with the victim's family, and the only thing that can give them solace is their loved one back, and that's impossible. So of course they're going to be up somewhere else.
That's correct.
Aren't.
Tim, if you don't mind, Susan Hendricks, was this plea agreed upon before the victims' families found out about it? I'm not talking about the public. I'm not talking about Morse or anybody else on this panel, because at least to that little tiny bit extent, Morse is right. What we think doesn't matter because it's already done. It's over. Isn't it true, Hendricks, that this deal was done before the family even knew about it? They were notified in an email, hey, here's the deal.
Yeah. Steve Gonzalez was so furious, he didn't even go into court when it was announced that a plea deal has been reached. Infuriated. Kaylee's brother is still, they're all still infuriated. Didn't speak at the victim impact statements. He said, I just feel like I couldn't contain myself. What was decided around us, not for us, around us, giving them really 24 hours to get to that courtroom to hear that a plea deal has been reached. They felt left out. They didn't even know.
Now,
To tell them how brutal the attacks were, but they heard just hours before the victim impact statements. They weren't even going to hear then. It's just, they kept them out. You're right. We don't matter. They do. And they.
okay, I'm going to stop it right here, guys, for a minute, because I want you to see something. Someone just brought up a really, really super good point, and I want to show you this. Let me make sure you can see this. In the document on the website, if I type in face, hold on, it's loading. I had to go back and retype it. Did you know in the evidence file, let me hit one. In the evidence file, y'all, someone just said if somebody got out a window and could have been able to save them. I thought that was a really interesting comment because I will show you. I think I got to go way back up. Hold on. Let me get out of this screen. Let me go up a little bit. Let me go right to the page 1. In the evidence file, you will see a list of things they put in evidence. And I noticed this last night. I didn't do a video yet. There was evidence on a window, and it was, where's it at? Hold on. I didn't plan on this, but since that message popped up, there is evidence on the window of a face print. Did anybody see that? Type a 1 if you found that. There was a face print on a window. God, where is it? Where are you? Set it right on the evidence sheet. Latent print, swab, jewelry. Where is it at? Oh my God, come on. It said face print on window. Did anyone see that? And it was the, I believe it was the kitchen window. Either that or the back window. Shit, let me find it so you can see it for yourself. Or if you're on this live dig and you saw it, type a 1. It said handprints, face print. Yep. Butt prints. No, I didn't see any butt prints. But I did see the face print. I saw it. It said it was a face print on the window. And it was evidence. Ground outside, kitchen. There it is. Evidence number photo 108. Kitchen window face mark. Kitchen window face mark. What if one of the victims, before they were unalived, got out and they chased her down? And on the body cam, you see them say, "Did you get her? Did you get her?" If one of them got away, could that one person save all of them? You guys are going to get in trouble. You're going to get in trouble. Do you remember the Banfield? Do I need to bring up the Banfield and piece that together for you? Because one of the police said, did you get her? Yes. I'm glad you guys are paying attention. There was photo 108, kitchen window face mark. Kitchen window right hand print. Kitchen window left hand print. Kitchen handprints. Ground outside kitchen window. Now, I don't know if these kitchen window screen, kitchen window sill, did someone get out? Did they lock the door to where somebody couldn't get out, but somebody got out? Don't know. Pure speculation. But that crossed my mind when I just was listening to this and you guys typed it in the chat. Interesting. Let's go back and listen to Nancy Grace, because that was an interesting ask.
They were tossed to the side, I believe.
And let me be very, very clear regarding Son of Sam laws. A U.S. Supreme Court case, I believe it was about the movie Wise Guys. But regardless of the movie, the Supreme Court's reversed the Son of Sam law, the national law. However, since that time, 40 or more states have enacted their own statewide Son of Sam laws that comply to the federal U.S. Supreme Court case. So there are Son of Sam laws in effect right now that are constitutionally approved, but not Idaho. Therefore, Koberger can make money.
Yes,
he can. Oh, yes, he can. Now, we are also learning from recently released files that Koberger is caught red-handed stalking the victims. We find out in the files that repeatedly...
Wrong. Wrong again, Nancy Grace. Read the files.
These young girls saw someone lurking in that tree line. Hey, your control room, please show me the home, the King Road address, especially that one video where McDonough and I walked up behind the house. There's a higher vantage point. If you can get the video, get it, because that's the tree line I think they're talking about, Chris McDonough. Repeatedly, the dog, I think the dog's name is Murphy, would go and attack the tree line uncharacteristically. I mean, you know when your dog is doing something they don't normally do. There you go. There you go. There's a tree line I think they're talking about, Chris McDonough. They saw a shadowy figure skulking in those trees. The dog would go and attack at the time they saw the shadowy figure and when they didn't see the shadowy figure, but they now believe he was there.
I just want to say, guys, I don't believe the stalking part. In those records, and I could show you again, let's jump over to the records. In the records, I'm going to type stalking. I love live digs. Okay, hope you're with me. Typed in stalking, waiting for it to pop up. Let's see if we find stalking. Do we find stalking? I asked Madison if she mentioned stalking behavior from anyone that made her uncomfortable, and she said she never spoke of anything. Well, who was this that wrote this report, that gave this to the police? John Lawrence took this, and this was supplemental narrative. Let's see, Gunderson dispatch to an unconscious person. This was J.K. J.K. then arrived at PD, who was informed of Dan's death. I provided Magazine's relationship. Okay. Okay. So this was Reddit. Stalking. No, let me find another one. So, stalking. Where do you guys think this whole stalking scenario came from? Anyone? Anyone make a guess? He had 0 connections. Correct. He wasn't stalking them. Yep. I spoke with S&K in the lobby interview room. They told me they had a great relationship with Madison. She got along with everyone. Didn't know of any stalking. So, where did this stalking story come from? Well, I asked Dee. Wait a minute, hold on. Where is the word? I want to make sure I get this right. Sketched out. She saw a dark gold minivan backing up King Road approximately 2 months prior. Holy shit. I never noticed that before, guys. Holy crap. I never noticed that before. I just noticed it on this live dig. Did anybody just hear what I said? Anyone? Did you guys hear this? Interview with D. I interviewed JD at the Moscow Police Department in regards to the quadruple homicides that occurred at 112 Road. And then it goes down to say, D stated this, D stated that. And he says, I asked D if he noticed or heard anything suspicious recently. D stated he saw a dark gold minivan backing up King Road approximately 1 to 2 months prior. He says gold, but wasn't the van that Molly saw tan? D stated he did not remember any suspicious circumstances. D said Kaylee would call him on occasion as she was walking home or she was feeling sketched out. D stated there were some people coming in and out of 1122 King Road frequently, and more people knew the code to their door than they should have. D stated he was not sure if the residents regularly locked the rear glass door. Well, that's sketch. They owned a dog, yada, yada, yada. Yada, yada, yada. I don't think. This is the guy who says, now, listen to this. They owned a dog, Murphy. He also told me Kaylee was taking the dog out sometime in the past when Kaylee saw a shadow figure behind the house. D stated nothing else came of the incident. So the only one spreading this narrative is somebody telling the police. D in this statement is Jack Decor. This is what he told Brett Payne on 1/11/23. I interviewed JD, Jack Decor, at the Moscow Police Department, and it was January, almost 2 months after this unaliving. Why did they wait so long to interview him? And how is it that he knew about the minivan and he's spreading the thing about the mysterious guy in the back property? Now, I know someone else said the same thing, but this guy knows 2 parts of this. Who fabricated the stalker to make it seem like Kohberger allegedly was the stalker? Who made it up? And why was Kaylee so scared she left her house to go stay with her family? Something isn't right. Something is not right with this picture. The big question is, why did Bill Thompson went ahead with the charge and change the plea deal? Absolutely. Absolutely. They couldn't prove it. So if somebody says in a police report 2 months after WSU Kim talked about the creeper, if they couldn't, hold on one more time. I'm just going to put van in the search again. And in this van, let's see what it pulls up. That's the gold minivan backing up 1 to 2 months prior. That's the U-Haul van Chief Fry moved the belongings. And the only other van mentioned in here was the tan van from the DoorDash driver. Do we have that right, guys? There was no other mention of a van. So why did the police not put out a be on the lookout for a van? Gold or tan van. That's the only, let me do gold because I remember, hold on, let me do tan. I remember that's what it said for the DoorDash, what they saw. Let me do a tan, hold on. It'll probably pull up the sheath and something else. Wow. That's a bit of information right there. So somebody made up the stalker. Because it didn't sound like she told her family. It sounded like she told some of the other people. I remember Emily Arnott on the, was it the Amazon series? She talked about a creepy guy. I'm looking for the tan van. Because I think that was the only other time that I seen anything mention of a tan van. Tan dog, standing, understand, circumstance, stand, tan, importance. There's quite a few in here just by searching tan. But I remember the DoorDash driver said there was a tan van, not a gold. And I can understand the interchangeable gold or tan. But why has no one else caught this? That is just too weird. And there you have more evidence in these files. I wonder if they'll ever go back and fix their error. Probably too late. Tan van. I remember it was the DoorDash driver that said that. Tan sedan or tan van. Tan other knife sheath substance. No, it was tan. Sheath was tan. I'll have to go back and look at my cheat sheet. But what do y'all think? Tan sedan. Okay, it was a tan sedan. So we have a tan sedan and a gold van and creepers. So people said the creepers were, John Decor said there was maybe somebody watching. Her friend said there was a creeper. Search sedan. Okay, let me search the sedan. A tan van and a sedan. Let me do a search. I bet you guys have got yours right next to you. Search sedan. Okay. White sedan after suspect vehicle. Wait, a review? And Indian Hills. Front license plate. Okay. A white sedan, which is the description of the white Elantra, suspect 1. White sedan, white sedan, white sedan. White sedan, white sedan. Nope, only sedan came up was the white sedan. I know it's in there. I'll look at my notes. Okay, so let's finish watching this because that'll probably prompt something else for us to look at.
And hold on, McDonough. On one of his many outings to scout the murder scene, idiot Koberger was actually pulled over. Watch this killer on cam.
Hey there. I stopped you going a little fast. You didn't realize this is 35?
Oh, it's 35?
It is, yeah. So you go.
41?
Yeah, 43 is what the radar said.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Do you have your license, the registration, insurance?
Can anyone see a sunroof on that? Can anyone see a sunroof? Haynes' first interview with MM is a tan sedan. Yeah, it is. Yep. I'm going to look and see if I can see a sunroof on this.
Were you wearing your seatbelt when I stopped you? No. That's no good.
Just being honest with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I mean, really? Chris McDonough, he's on his way to stalk the victims, to spy on them, sneak around, skulk in that tree line, and watch them maybe inside undressing or whatever he tried to
He was
catch
shopping
visually.
at Target, Nancy.
And he's pulled over for hitting speed limit, not wearing a seatbelt. How relieved is he? He's planning a quadruple murder, Chris.
Yeah, and you and I stood right there and looked in the same vantage point he did. And so, it's important to understand if you're going to go sit down with Satan, you better understand the neighborhood he hangs out in. And when you have the district attorney later on here, not taking a shot at my colleague here, but when you have the DA, coming in and telling the world, we're not really sure what his motive is. We're not sure if there's a sexual component to this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what are you sure of then in its totality? Because the public is sure, okay, they're connecting the dots that, there's information that this guy brutally did what he did, how he did it. And all of a sudden, the family's becoming an attachment to the email that, oh, by the way, we're going to make a deal with the devil here. There's something wrong here. There's something definitely wrong here.
I want you to hear this too. So here he is. He's out seeing the victims, and we have him on video en route to the murder scene. He's pulled over for exceeding the speed limit, not by much. And he's worried about insurance. Listen.
Yeah, I just have a question about that. So in terms of when you get a speeding ticket that's obviously reported to your insurance, is that the same thing with the seatbelt?
I don't think so. I think it's only moving violations that go to insurance, or things that may put points on your license.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure. Could I get a phone number from you?
Yeah, why?
We need to put it on the citation as it goes to the court.
And he's worried that his phone number is going to be on the citation. He ain't crazy, Delatory. He's asking about his driver's license, registration, insurance. He doesn't want his cell number on the police report. He is
You don't have to, by law, give your phone number, people.
not crazy. No wonder they didn't put up the insanity defense. Because you play this, here he is out stalking the victim's home, and he's caught. And he's perfectly sane.
Yeah, he's perfectly sane. He's clearly logical and rational in what he's wanting to do. Now, the behavior he ends up doing is completely irrational. There's no reason for him to have done this other than he wanted to. That's the key. Everything was about him wanting to hurt these people. Everything is about how he feels frustrated and just wants to erase these people as an exemplar of his overall level of frustration with what's going on.
I think he wanted more than that, Delatory. I think he wanted to have sex with the women, but he has been rejected by people so many times. I mean, whoa. Isn't it true? Dave Mack joining me, Crime Stories investigative reporter, that one woman met up with him via Tinder, and he started asking her about what would be the worst way to be murdered. That was their last date. What happened, Dave Mack?
They actually met through Tinder, like you said. And during the course of their date, the date shares a story of a murder that took place in her hometown. And as they talked further, Kohberger actually asked her about what would the worst way to die be. And I think she said knife. And he suggested, out of the thin air, a K-bar knife. Until this story came out, Nancy, a lot of us had no idea of what a K-bar knife was. Why would anyone bring it up on a date?
Let's let the defense.
Well, that's hearsay. Where's the date to say this? Where's the date? That's hearsay. If you had to put a witness on the stand, they'd have to say, yes, this is what we talked about. This is coming from the third party, which is hearsay.
Attorney at that. So he meets a Tinder date. He wants to have sex with her.
Yep.
So his lead up to that, to woo her, is talking about what would be the worst way for her to be murdered. And she says by knife. He goes, oh, like a K-bar? Like coincident, Greg Morse.
No, you're right. And I think, this is the unfortunate situation of society. People don't think someone acts weird or something. They just kind of forget about it. It's out of their life. But that's why I keep non-emergency police agency number in my phone, my local community. No, that's not what I'm saying. You're sitting here talking like, I don't know, it's next to the murder. What I'm saying. So let's talk about when he's at this. What I'm pointing out, you're 100% right. That's a bizarre way to talk to a woman you're on a date with, right? That's unusual. He's a weird guy. We also have the experience they reported of him at the strip club.
Man.
He
got a couple of weeks before the murder, and he's talking to his sex target about a K-bar.
Nancy, any prosecutor could win this case. Like, this is easy to win from the prosecution side. So what does that add to where we are today? Nothing. He would have been convicted. He committed the crimes. And my guess is, if you look through this guy's video history, he probably watched the documentary Murders at some point, because this is very reminiscent, except not as extreme, because they let the victims on fire in Connecticut. And Connecticut chose to bring the death penalty back for those two, where Idaho chose not to follow it in this case and give life sentences. But my guess is, when he went to that strip club and he was the only person there, he was tempted to maybe act out then, but he got scared. That's why he didn't. He was leading up to what unfortunately happened to those young folks that he was convicted of. But there's all these instances of weird ways.
Delatory.
No, not intentional.
Do you hear Morse?
It's intentional.
Oh, I'm still hearing him. It's like a gnat. I can hear it, but I can't see it. Dr. Delatory, you hear Morse saying something about society, blah, 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 blah. And then it's an unfortunate thing that happened. It's like they had an accident or something. Quadruple, premeditated, frenzied, brutal attack. You can't explain it away. And the deal was done in secret and presented by email to the victim's family. If the world had known the facts we're learning now, and I'm just, this is a tip of the iceberg, no one would have agreed to this. There would be an uprising, an insurrection.
There should be.
Yeah, I think the idea is what we have to remember, that there are no coincidences in murder investigations, right? These past behaviors are clearly indicative of what he has going on in his mind, because it's too specific. As for the deal happening in secret, I mean, in what other way can the prosecutor kind of get this through if it's not in secret? I think the prosecutor knew that this was going to look poorly amongst the community, amongst society, and amongst the victim's family. So he needed to push it through in a way that he can kind of say, you know, listen, this was kind of spur of the moment. We needed to get this done. I think in the prosecutor's mind, he's probably trying to save the feelings of the family, but the family deserved their opportunity to have their voices heard in court.
Surviving roommate
All right.
Dylan Mortensen heard a person she believed was Kaylee scream that somebody was in the house, then heard someone run down from the third floor to Xana's room on the second floor, where she then heard what she called a commotion. Mortensen hears an unfamiliar male voice say, "You're going to be fine. I'm going to help you."
Dylan was in her room while hearing the commotion, only briefly opening up her door to see if she could tell what was happening. After hearing the man saying, "I'm going to help you," Dylan opens the door and sees Koberger, describing him to Officer Nunez as 6 feet tall, slim build, a black mask with bushy eyebrows.
Joe Scott Morgan joining us, professor of forensics and star of Body Bags podcast with Joe Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, the prosecutor has come out and said the reason Koberger didn't murder Dylan Mortensen is because Koberger was afraid. Didn't he say that, Susan Hendricks?
Afraid?
Absolutely afraid that maybe someone would see him because of all the commotion. But now that I hear the details, they are so lucky. I believe he would have done it in an instant, killed Bethany and Dylan if he saw them.
My God.
Joe, that's total BS. He just frenzy attacked a young girl, stabbing her in the face, 30 times, another one 50 times in total, slicing Ethan's jugular vein, asphyxiation, beating with the butt of a knife. He's not afraid of Dylan Mortensen. Why is the prosecutor saying that?
I don't know. I've given this some thought, Nancy. And one of the things that I'd kind of thought about, if it's targeting one of the two victims on the third floor, he goes in, he murders, slaughters both these two precious souls. Then as he's on an adrenaline high at that moment in time.
Whoa, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. They just got done saying there was an extensive fight with Kaylee. Don't you think they all would have heard if they were all sleeping? Hello? And then they're going to open their doors after they just heard this brutal fight upstairs. Oh, the dog was dancing. Kaylee was dancing with the dog in the middle of the night upstairs. Okay.
So after that adrenaline dump, he's coming down the staircase, at which time he encounters Xana. And it's then his adrenaline, he gets another adrenaline dump, chases her into the room. I think that he's completely exhausted. I think that probably he's got the 1,000-yard stare where he's just focused on trying to get the hell out of this place as quickly as he can. And, you know, I don't know. I guess he has a survival instinct. He's
How in the hell could he see at night with visual snow? He has a hard time driving. Why do you think it's such a bad driver? I don't know if I could listen to this any longer. It's almost over.
Seems like he's more bent on trying to impress law enforcement at traffic stops. And then, of course, we hear about him trying to dominate the initial conversation that he had with the police. He's kind of hard to figure out, but I don't think that he is truly hard to figure out. Again, I think he's like a reptile. I don't think he has a soul, Nancy. I really don't.
We stop now to remember an American hero, Officer Jacob Chaffins, Prestonburg PD, just 28 years old, shot in the line of duty, leaves behind grieving widow, wife Hannah,
and a little girl, Paisley. American hero, Officer Jacob Chaffins.
That's sad. Okay. R.I.P. So that was just a bonus because somebody had mentioned it. So yeah, I watched Nancy Grace this morning. Unfortunately, I regret that. And to end this stream, before I jump onto birdies, I need to go take a restroom break. But do you think this night sheet was really evidence, or was it just a ruse? Was it a plant laying by a victim, Maddie Mogen? It is terrible what happened to these 4 college students. Truly terrible. And it would be a miscarriage of justice not to find the unalivers, the murderers who did this. Who did this to these 4? It would be unjust to allow the people who did this to walk free in America on our streets, live next to us. Like and follow for more. Make sure you subscribe to all. Everyone be well. I'll see you over at Birdies. Take care. Be well.